Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead. On this video today we want to talk about what's working in the Deep South and what's not working, and how we're altering them to make them work, if we think it's possible. First thing we want to talk about is raised beds. Raised beds in the Deep South is a joke here at Deep South Homestead. The only way that you can make a raised bed work right here in our sandy soil is you've got to have an irrigation system put in it, and it's got to be irrigated every day, twice a day. At Deep South Homestead, where we raise everything we eat, that's just not possible. So raised beds have to be altered to us to not necessarily be called a raised bed, but to be a bordered bed that's in the ground, so that we can help keep weeds out of it. Now, the bed that I have in front of me here is a carrot bed. If you notice the carrot bed, this side of the bed is level with the ground. We originally had this bed up out of the ground like this side on both sides. This bed kept drying out and drying out and drying out, and we just kept putting water and water and water. We're losing our whole carrots. Our carrots would be little tiny carrots all year, wouldn't amount to much. So we came in, we filled in the other side to ground level, and only left this side right here maybe 4 inches out of the ground. The dirt's about 4 inches out of the ground. When we did that, this bed became extremely productive because it was no longer above the ground, it was even with the ground on one side and only 4 inches out of the ground on the other side, because we are on all of our land slopes here, so most of what we do is terracing. Everything we do is on a terrace. So we've learned here at Deep South Homestead, in our raised beds with carrots, we need to keep them ground level and just keep the borders around them to help us keep encroaching weeds out. It makes it a lot easier for us to keep the weeds out of the bed if we have a border around it, because it gives a defined area for the carrots to grow, and it just seems to work a lot better, specifically when we're covering the ground to plant the carrot seeds in the ground. We cover our carrot seeds, and it just works out really good because we have covers that's made to fit the beds. Most of the beds are 4 foot wide and 16 feet long. That works out perfect for us. We get enough carrots out of this bed and the one up above it there to can for a whole year. So that's working out real good with us on these raised beds. Now we're going to look at some other raised beds, and we're going to talk about the problems we had with them. This was one of our raised beds here. Now this bed, I'm going to talk a little bit about the borders of the bed. The bed we just talked about had treated material put around it probably, I don't know, it's around 15 years ago. And it's just now getting to the point where we're fixing to have to replace it. We tried cedar. Cedar lasted about 1 year, and the termites just eat it up. I know people say termites won't eat cedar, but they do here. So they ramsacked it, so we ended up with treated wood. It's been good for about 15 years. This one, I went in the woods and I actually drug 8-inch logs up here, oak logs. I thought, well, maybe that'll suffice this one. The 8-inch oak logs lasted about 3 years, and the termites and the mold, whatever, the rot, fire ants built all up in them. I mean, they just deteriorated and they just went away. They just crumbled back up into the soil. So the log borders was not going to work here at Deep South Homestead. So we have this bed. It has no borders around it at the moment. But we're going to be going to town, and we're going to be getting some more of the new treated wood to put around this one. And supposedly this new treatment, they're telling me, is not extremely toxic to food sources and stuff like that. I'm not sure about that. They're using it in homes now and stuff like that. They're saying that termites won't eat it, and then it'll hold up to the weather very well. So we're going to look into that, because we can't put cedar back because it won't last either. So this ground also over here, now this one is below the ground level just a little bit, and over here it's above the ground level just a little bit. That's simply because of the steepness of the hillside. When we put the boards up, that one will still be below the ground surface. This one will be about 4 inches. We don't ever want to come over 4 inches out of the ground with our gardening ones, because we've learned with carrots that's just not a good thing. So we got to get this bed built. We have it ready. It's just another thing in the process. Now we're going to take you on to one of the other beds and show you some of the problems we're having with those beds. Okay, now this is our strawberry bed. This strawberry bed here, the ground and the ground are both the same level. Even though the board's sticking up because this is on a hillside. This is a water diverter so that the water don't come over and get into our strawberry bed. This side is about 8 inches out of the ground. This particular bed, the strawberries from about halfway of this bed over do really well. The strawberries from this side across dry out really fast, and we're constantly having to water them. We never get the amount of berries off of that side that we normally would. So once again, the fact that this sandy soil and the bed being out of the ground over 4 inches is proven that it's not a good thing on the strawberries. Now we have another strawberry bed up here we're going to look at, and we're going to see how it's functioning. This here is our second strawberry bed. It is 4 inch. It is level with the ground in the front on the inside. The back side's about 8 inches out of the ground. This bed doing exactly the same thing that that bed down there does. This part of the bed right in here seems to do really well. This half over here without extra water doesn't seem to do as well. So it's not the fact that it's one bed over the other bed, it's consistent between the two beds. So we know that that is an issue with this sandy soil here at Deep South Homestead. Now, I actually have another bed we're going to look at, and we're going to see how it's working. Okay, now this bed is 8 inches out of the ground all the way around it. Nothing, literally nothing grows in this bed like it should. These onions you see right here, when the weather dries out, all these onions die and they go back into the ground to nothing. And when it starts raining, they start coming back up. We've been in a rainy, about 3 weeks of rain here, and these onions are starting to come back. I have garlic in here. This is a volcanic garlic that comes from an extremely hot part of Mexico. Even the volcanic garlic, when it gets hot here, this stuff dies and goes back into the ground because this bed is so high out of the ground. With it being 8 inches out of the ground, the biggest issue we have is like here right around this stick right here, fire ants. The fire ants are boiling up on this right here. I just touched it. When you get up out of the ground here, that's what you have. You have fire ants because fire ants try to build beds up out of the ground to raise their little ones and not be in the water in the ground. So raised beds here, fire ants are one of our #1 culprits for destroying our plants here. And guys, look, you see this wood right here? This bed is 3 years old, and you know what? This was treated wood I bought. Look at this. Look at it. Termites. Look at it right here. That's termites. It's eating up treated wood here at Deep South Homestead. That's why we tell y'all that we've got to have treated wood to even last 3 years here, because it's absolutely will not hold up in this heat, humidity, and moisture here. This whole thing, look at it. It's just all falling apart. All right, guys, now that we're through talking about raised beds, we're going to talk about Back to Eden. Where I'm standing right here, this was our Back to Eden garden. This is the 3rd year we've had a Back to Eden garden here, and we've put wood chips on it. Guys, I mean, my wood chips are 6 inches and 8 inches deep here. These chamber bitters, they don't care if it's 10 inches deep. They're going to come up in it, and the fact that I can't put a plow in this means I got to get out here on my hands and knees, and I got to hand do this. I have to hand plant it. I have to do everything in this bed by hand. Now I'm going to have to go through here. I'm going to have to hand weed this again, because all this has gone to seed. Unless I want these seeds in my garden, I've got to hand weed it, get them all out, and I got to come in here and pull this up. Let me tell you something. We fix to put a tractor in here. When we get that done, we're going to plow this ground up and turn it over, and I'm going to plant it in the old conventional way where I can run equipment in here and take care of my garden. So I am through with Back to Eden. It doesn't work here on my homestead. I'm at my age, I've got no more business trying to get out here and put things in the ground that's going to make me have to work harder in the heat and produce less, because it actually produced less than my other gardens do where I row crop it. So guys, as far as I'm concerned, at Deep South Homestead, Back to Eden is over. We will never do it again. It's not worth it for us. It may offend some of y'all, but I tell you what, I've got to do what works here. Just like you got to do what you do, what works where you're at. Back to Eden may work perfect where you're at. But at my homestead, it doesn't work because weeds, fire ants, insects love to live in this stuff. I can turn this stuff over here, and there's all kind of little insects crawling around in it here that literally chew my plants off when I put them in it. And the rattlesnake beans I put in here. The rattlesnake beans had to be planted 3 times this year because every time we planted them and they started growing up, the insects out of this old bark and stuff come up and chewed them off, and we'd have to replant in between the ones that didn't make it. So guys, I'm not into that. I'm through with Back to Eden at Deep South Homestead because it doesn't work for me. Okay guys, we're up in another form of gardening we do, and it's called container gardening. Now it looks a little rough right now because we're through gardening in it for this part of the year, and in a few weeks we're going to go through here and clean them all out, and we'll redo them for the winter time. But guys, let me tell you something. Every pot you see here did not cost me 1 dime. It was free. That's a plus at Deep South Homestead when it's for free. The PVC system out here, this is an irrigation system that I designed and put in here. I have a ball valve at each one of them. I can adjust the amount of water flow to each set of pots. If I'm not planting those pots, I can turn it off and there's no water wasted. And you know what? The filler that goes in them, we had trash piles that was pushed up during Hurricane Katrina, trees and stuff like that and stumps, and they rotted. The dirt you see in here was the dirt that come out of those trash piles. It's rotted, just rotted wood is all it is. It is perfect soil for these pots. It done fantastic. We put it in here. We've amended it. We put the lime that we need and the nutrients that we need in it that was missing. These pots with this type of irrigation system is a plus here at Deep South Homestead because we have little benches that is the perfect height. Wanda and I can sit at those benches and we can work these pots in our older age, and we have absolutely no problem with them. And to water them, all these pots right here takes me about 4 or 5 minutes. When I turn the water system on, each one of them is irrigated exactly the same. None of them get left out. It's the perfect system for us here at Deep South Homestead. And now there's some things that don't work in it. Yep, we found some plants that don't work in it too well. But we found out a lot of plants really do good in it. So the pots, now one thing we've noticed, I will say this, the pots that are exposed to the extreme sunlight, you notice these are up under the trees here. The pots that are exposed out in just the bald open sun, where only can grow 2 or 3 different things in those pots because they have to be hot, heat-loving plants. The plants that we put in here, they're in the morning shade right here. They get the evening shade. The middle of the day, the sun hits them. These pots work out perfect for us in a lot of ways. Now the ones right here on the very end do get a little burnt, but the rest of them tend to flourish. So we may end up taking some of the ones off of the front, making another row down yonder under the more shaded part, and just trying to alter it around because that's what it's about. It's about altering and figuring out what works best. But as far as the raised pot, as far as the container gardening, it's working out great for us here at Deep South Homestead. Okay guys, this is the Hoople Bed right here. It's about 150 feet long. This was originally dug to be a terrace row to control the water flow down through our property here. But we realized, hey, we got this big giant ditch in the ground, let's make a Hoople Bed out of it. So I went on my property, I picked up a whole bunch of rotten logs, I brought them in here and I filled this thing full of rotten logs all the way to the end, covered it back up, and we've been trying to use it as a Hoople Bed. Some things have done okay, some things not okay, but what we're learning is the pineapples are doing okay on it because pineapples seem to like this type of environment. But the asparagus here, the asparagus is not doing too good. So we realize an asparagus on a Hoople Bed is not working. And as you see down through yonder, the weeds just take it over. And it's a lot of work to have to do. So what we're doing is we're just going to turn this into a terrace again. We may put some things along the fronts of it here. We're going to use it as a swale on the other end. We got fruit trees planted behind it so that the water can keep the trees watered. But what we've learned most of all is all the rotten logs up under this hoogle bed has become a rat nest. And anything we plant on it, the rats live in those logs and they just come up through here and they eat the roots off of everything we do. So the hoogle bed, as far as we're concerned here at Deep South Homestead, does not work and it's not any good. So we're not going to be doing what's called hoogle bed gardening here at Deep South Homestead anymore. Okay guys, this is a summary on all the different types of gardening we're doing here at Deep South Homestead that's not conventional gardening. And I hope y'all have enjoyed this. So thank you from Deep South Homestead.